Millions are tuned in as the biggest gaming tournament finally crowns a new champion, while the crowd loses their minds watching the absolute peak of virtual competition unfold, where one player, Shin Ha-yeon, just shattered every expectation by refusing to ever back down, accepting the inaugural championship trophy and officially launching her career as a professional gamer. Because her reflexes and raw instinct are simply operating on a level no one else touches, truly transcending the limits of a standard player to become something entirely new. But after conquering the stage, she's already looking toward her next big pro debut, leaving everyone to wonder exactly who will rise to challenge her throne, especially since the landscape of competitive gaming is about to get a whole lot more intense. And just like that, 6 years of history pass in the blink of an eye, leading us to a high-tech facility where the next phase of this story begins, where a young man finally stirs inside a sophisticated full-dive recovery capsule, waking up to a world that feels strange and new after a long, forced hiatus, and Oh Jae-hye, the head of the R&D center, is there to oversee his first session back, noting that the connection feels lighter and more responsive than anything he remembers from before. As he tests out the new hardware and finds his body surprisingly synced with the machine, so Oh Jae-hye calls him over to review the data from his latest successful run, showing him how their new capsule model has effectively removed all previous physical barriers to entry, and now even those with physical limitations can finally step into the game and compete. Seo-jun questions if his high synchronization rate can really keep the costs manageable. But Oh Jae-hye hesitates before dropping the actual price tag on him, announcing a cool 100 million won to get the system running, leaving Seo-jun completely floored by the sheer scale of that number, who clearly does not have that kind of cash sitting in his bank account. So Oh Jae-hye pivots to a special proposal to bridge the gap, highlighting the revolutionary capsule designed to merge virtual reality with everyday life, promising a level of immersion that society was absolutely dying to experience, where players could unleash devastating power in high-stakes combat encounters, leaping into the fray against massive enemies with legendary gear, and cutting through lines of defense like a true veteran warrior, with boss encounters so intense that the line between game and reality vanishes, pushing players to start the fight with everything they have, showing off flashy skills that got Seo-jun hooked on the rush. While the rest of the world followed the trend into this new digital frontier, but the dream turned into a nightmare when his hardware hit a critical error, revealing his synchronization rate had plummeted to a pathetic 10%, forcing Seo-jun to stare at his reality as a failed gamer on the bus, where he scrolls past ads for the very capsule that ruined his life, and realizes that 100 million won is still light years out of his reach. Seo-jun wonders if he should have ever touched a capsule, lost in his own thoughts as he wanders back home, leaving the city lights and gaming ads behind for now, until he steps inside to find his roommate already busy, glued to a screen showing a high-stakes tournament final live, where veteran streamer Kim Tae-woo is losing his mind over the broadcast, barely noticing Seo-jun walk through the door with his own worries, pointing out a legendary showdown between Shin Ha-yeon and a mysterious challenger, making Seo-jun question why everyone is obsessed with this specific league, while Kim Tae-woo stares at his PC in total disbelief at the sudden system prompts, revealing the League of Streaming logo burning bright across the monitor, as the global viewer count hits a mind-boggling 15 million people, proving the massive scale of the tournament and its golden trophy. With Kim Tae-woo breaking down the meta of bows versus magic, hyping up the diverse playstyles that make this game so iconic, while Seo-jun stays skeptical about the supremacy of the sword class, considering his own past failures with a blade during his earlier run, so he brings up his disastrous attempt at the second-floor dungeon, causing Kim Tae-woo to choke on his snacks while laughing at the painful memory. Before Seo-jun retorts with his usual deadpan style, ending the conversation with a sarcastic jab, Seo-jun brushes off the sudden interest in Ryo's, keeping his real intentions hidden despite the phone in his hand signaling a persistent, incoming recruitment offer, showing a message that finally cracks his armor and demands a decision, because the tournament organizers are baiting him with a high-end capsule as a prize. And a mysterious woman confirms the special arrangement is waiting if he signs up, leaving Seo-jun to weigh the gamble against his own buried aspirations, so he turns back to the recruiter with a look of quiet resolve, before heading back to the couch to drop the bombshell on Kim Tae-woo, who nearly chokes on his snacks again, processing the news that Seo-jun is actually interested, confirming that the decision to enter the tournament is already set in stone. With Seo-jun flashing a rare, confident smirk that catches his friend completely off guard, while Kim Tae-woo stares, trying to reconcile this ambition with Seo-jun's cynical reputation, questioning how someone who quit the game expects to just walk back into the arena. Yet Seo-jun reveals he has been dwelling on the game since the moment he quit, driven by the phantom memory of his past life as the sword god, visualizing himself back in the thick of combat with a blade in hand, where he once dominated the battlefield against overwhelming odds, drawing his signature weapon with the precision of a true grandmaster, unleashing a flurry of strikes that cut through his enemies like paper, and standing amidst the wreckage reclaiming the cold, familiar satisfaction of absolute victory. That past life keeps clawing its way back to the surface, pulling up memories of a dark, forgotten time he never asked for, when he was just a commodity sold at a black market auction. Trapped at the absolute bottom of a cruel, unfeeling underworld, forced to endure a life of chains and total degradation, until the blood spilled and the path ahead finally broke open, standing as the legendary sword god amidst the remnants of his tormentors. Yet he remembers the moment a stranger offered him a way out, reaching out a hand that would become his master and savior, pulling him from the brink of total despair that night, and shielding him from a world that only saw him as a tool. Leaving him to carry the crushing weight of expectation alone, even as the fabled sword god, he was never truly free, still haunted by the lessons and the man who gave him everything. But the reality of his present life snaps him right back, with Kim Tae-woo staring in disbelief at his sudden, reckless ambition, demanding to know why he bought that premium capsule for the tournament, reminding him that the entry requirements for Rios are absolutely brutal. Especially since every popular streamer is already fighting for a qualifying spot, and Kim Tae-woo is convinced he has officially lost his mind. Kim Tae-woo keeps hammering home how impossible it is to actually get popular in this scene, pointing out the absurd level of charisma and content curation these streamers are pumping out, with god-tier skills that keep their audiences locked in for hours on end, not to mention the top-tier humor and editing that keeps the engagement numbers climbing. While ordinary people are grinding away late into the night just to get noticed, usually ending up with dead chat rooms and zero viewers for their trouble, so Kim Tae-woo rightfully questions if Jin Seo-jun has any idea what he is getting into, watching as Seo-jun turns toward the gaming capsule with a focused, quiet intensity, believing that raw, high-level skill is still the ultimate trump card in any game. Though Kim Tae-woo just shakes his head, clearly doubting his friend's stubborn optimism, because the current bar is set by absolute legends like the famous Shin Ha-yeon, yet Seo-jun brushes that off, claiming he is already better than her, which earns a sarcastic laugh from Kim Tae-woo, who thinks he is totally delusional, finally forcing the issue by shoving Seo-jun toward the capsule for a hard reality check, and insisting that if this fails, Seo-jun is doing all the chores for the foreseeable future, while a confident, almost hidden smile creeps across Seo-jun's face, agreeing to the terms without a single moment of hesitation as the system begins the countdown to link him into the virtual reality space, despite having 0 hours of playtime recorded on his account until this very second, leaving him to face the digital unknown with nothing but his past life experience. Seo-jun realizes that hesitating is the only real barrier to his own potential, so he steps into the virtual training grounds with a focused, quiet intensity, where the system immediately signals that Kim Tae-woo has also entered the arena, forcing a quick reunion as Kim Tae-woo catches up to him inside the simulation, explaining that this space is the game's built-in sandbox for testing raw combat skills, where users can spar against AI recreations based on the best player records. And Kim Tae-woo warns him that fighting for real here carries a heavy price, since any damage taken in the match translates into physical pain for the player, plus the AI difficulty scales from level 1 all the way up to 10, which Shin Ha-yeon has dominated for 5 straight years without anyone breaking her streak, meaning Seo-jun needs to clear level 9 first just to earn a challenge, though he listens to the breakdown with a look of pure, calculated interest. Not bothered by the warnings as he starts navigating the complex interface, until a match notification pops up and the training bot spawns in, leaving Kim Tae-woo worried that he jumped into a fight without thinking, because the AI instantly closes the distance with terrifying, robotic precision, yet Seo-jun meets the mechanical strike head-on with his own training weapon, causing Kim Tae-woo to watch in disbelief at the speed of the exchange. As Seo-jun unleashes a flurry of counters that catches the machine off guard, and the fight intensifies immediately as he pushes the high-level AI to respond. The training bot pivots to reset its stance, while Seo-jun executes a clean downward slash, sending the AI's health bar plummeting into the red, even if he pauses for a split second to wonder if it was just luck, because the machine recovers instantly to launch a new, aggressive charge, forcing him to parry a high-speed strike with his own blade, and the two lock into a blur of rapid-fire steel, with the bot testing his reactions at every single angle, so Seo-jun ducks under a lethal arc and drives his sword home, leaving Kim Tae-woo watching from the sidelines with his jaw on the floor, as the training bot collapses to the floor officially defeated while a system readout signals the end of the simulation, and Seo-jun stands over the deactivated remains of the machine, where the status board confirms he just cleared level 9, prompting Kim Tae-woo to shout in disbelief at the record-breaking feat, since the system does not give him a moment to catch his breath, because a new, far more advanced combat model begins to materialize, sporting a high-tech visor that glows with a warning orange light, as the sleek, upgraded AI draws its own blade and steps forward, revealing a design that mirrors the legendary Shin Ha-yeon herself. Seo-jun stands ready in the arena, completely unfazed by the synthetic copy of the legend, while Oh Jae-hye confronts the director regarding her controversial decision to grant him a free loan, questioning why she would risk so much on a recruit who seemed destined for failure. Yet the director remains unmoved, standing by her choice to provide the training capsule despite the cost, remembering how everyone initially dismissed him as someone who would never even qualify for Rios. But she simply refuses to let such raw, untapped potential wither away in the shadows, pointing to his file, which shows his sync rates have skyrocketed past his original baseline, and her confidence in his rapid growth suggests he is no longer the same amateur, even though her colleague still worries that betting on his victory is a massive gamble. She smiles, fully convinced that his current trajectory is headed straight for the top. Pinning all her hopes on the outcome of this single high-stakes simulation, as Seo-jun clashes steel against the Shin Hyeon model, testing his reflexes against her perfect programming, with observers watching the feed closely, genuinely doubting he can overcome such a lethal opponent. And a hand hovers over the record button, ready to capture history if he succeeds, while tensions rise for those witnessing his desperate struggle to survive the Eye's relentless assault. Since the simulated Shin Hyeon puts on a masterclass of combat, forcing Seo-jun to his limits, but he refuses to back down, parrying a strike that would have finished a lesser fighter, taking the fight back to the AI with a precision strike that sparks against her blade, and the speed of their exchange blurs everything else in the room into a frantic mess, until Seo-jun finally locks eyes with his digital adversary, realizing exactly who he is up against. Recognizing the lethal combat style of the legendary Shin Hyeon, Jin Seo-jun compares her movements to the terrifying elite he remembers from his past life. Admitting that nobody else on Earth could ever match her caliber, a frantic observer interrupts his focus, desperate to understand how he is holding his own, but Seo-jun ignores the noise, diving back into the lethal rhythm of the duel, with the bystanders still shouting in disbelief at his impossible survival. Questioning the secret behind his ability to match such a high-tier combat simulation, as he channels his focus into a precise, calculated parry, the steel ringing out with a sharp chime that echoes across the arena, showing he can withstand the onslaught without taking a single point of damage, acknowledging that the sensory feedback of this virtual reality is genuinely unparalleled, while his opponent demands to know if his reckless aggression was intentional. He coolly admits his curiosity drove him to test the limits of her ruthless programming, triggering a lethal escalation from the Shin Hyeon model, who shifts into a gear that forces him to retreat, and she lunges forward with a kinetic force that threatens to shatter his defense, locking her sights on him with a crimson glow that signals a kill shot. Their blades meet in the center of the room with a blinding flash. Seo-jun bracing himself against the overwhelming pressure of her superior stats, until the AI pushes him to the breaking point of the simulation's endurance. The interface flickers to life as the system registers the lethal intent. Jin Seo-jun tracks the movement with cold precision. Shin Hyeon's combat model swings with enough speed to displace the very air, but he sidesteps the strike and counters with a swift kick to her chassis, forcing the machine to regain its footing in the shadows. And a system notification confirms a sliver of damage to the advanced AI. She pauses to taunt him for his defensive stance, so Jin Seo-jun drops the pretense and lunges forward to seize the initiative, closing the distance instantly as he launches a full-scale assault. Their blades collide in a deafening spray of sparks, and the raw power behind his strike begins to overwhelm her guard, tearing through the integrity of her defense in one clean motion. While the AI realizes too late that she underestimated his true capability, her weapon shatters under the weight of his final blow, sending the combat model crashing to the ground in a heap of broken parts. A smirk spreads across Jin Seo-jun's face as the victor, and he stands over the defeated program while the arena lights shift, telling the system that she needs a few decades of practice before challenging him again, as the defeated combat model begins to dissipate into digital code. And the match concludes with a clear system victory for Jin Seo-jun. Jin Seo-jun can barely believe he just cleared the trial against Shin Hyeon, but now the system confirms his ownership of level 10 has officially changed, and a new day dawns with the promise of a fresh start, where Kim Tae-woo keeps busy with household chores while Jin Seo-jun relaxes, complaining about the undercooked noodles and the endless list of unfinished errands. Since Kim Tae-woo is already juggling enough tasks to keep the house running, Jin Seo-jun ignores the bickering to check on his high-end gaming pod, ready to jump into the digital world and kick off his first stream, settling into the chair as the system begins its initialization sequence, and a blinding flash of light pulls him into the virtual interface, depositing him inside a sterile, high-tech waiting area with no one else around. Leaving Jin Seo-jun to wonder if this is the correct starting point, until a system prompt flickers into view to guide his next move, explaining that this personal lobby is the staging ground for his upcoming content, where a digital avatar appears to walk him through the basic stream setup, prompting Jin Seo-jun to consider how best to present himself to his future audience, choosing to dive straight into the game treadle to make a name for himself. And the interface reveals the sheer scale of the platform he is about to conquer, setting his sights on the #1 spot to gain the recognition required by Rios, as his broadcast finally goes live and the game world awaits his first move. Jin Seo-jun locks in the title Dawn of the Assassination Squad, picking a sprawling medieval cityscape as his grand virtual stage, where players pull off wild, creative kills in a ruthless sandbox. Making it a massive hit that grabbed everyone's attention immediately upon launch, and even a week later the comment sections are still absolutely swarming, proving it's the perfect playground for a streamer just starting his climb. So Jin Seo-jun surveys the rooftops where the real action happens, gripping his gear tight as he prepares for the first contract, moving with the practiced ease of a veteran killer in the shadows, scanning the stone edge for the perfect vantage point to strike. Perched high above the city under the moonlight, he spots his mark, standing alone against the skyline in his sleek assassin's gear, ready to put his skills to the test for the incoming audience, asking himself if he's truly prepared to face the live chat. The system notification pings, signaling that his broadcast is officially live, flashing a bold headline to bait viewers into clicking his channel, knowing he's banking on Kim Tae-woo's questionable marketing genius to draw them in. while Kim Tae-woo pushes his own brand of chaotic amateur coaching, leaving Jin Seo-jun to wonder if this entire strategy will actually work. But there's no turning back now as he leaps into the fray. Jin Seo-jun drops into the bustling city streets, soaking in the game's atmosphere while checking out the visuals, boots hitting the pavement as he slides into character mode, spotting a key NPC named Dane. Christina steps in with a warning about the mission's lethality. Questioning if he really understands the danger involved, Jin Seo-jun realizes the game uses auto-dialogue for the interactions. Identifying his own character's name from the quest briefing, Christina hesitates for a second, caught off guard by his confidence. Jin Seo-jun tells her he is ready to pay the price for this contract. She accepts his resolve but warns him about the enemies, telling her to head to the tavern while he scouts ahead. Christina hands over a critical mission item before they part ways, grinning to himself because he knows exactly where this is heading. Jin Seo-jun draws his blade and embraces the incoming chaos, launching himself off the rooftops toward his first target, moving with the precision of a top-tier gamer in his element, slicing through the dark as he closes the distance, landing perfectly on the ledge to execute the opening strike, locking onto the target and preparing to finish the job. Jin Seo-jun realizes the tutorial auto mode has finally cut him loose, scanning the alleyways for a path forward through the city, but finding his way blocked by a wall that needs some parkour, so he follows the system prompt to grab the nearby pipe, reaching out to haul himself up toward the rooftops, gripping the metal tight as he tests the game's physical feedback, vaulting over the ledge with an agility that surprises even him, landing in a crouch while feeling the weight of his own body. Marveling at how high the immersion level really is this time, realizing he needs to stay loose to master these fluid movements, a new system notification pops up detailing the assassination target Edora, confirming his primary objective is to eliminate this high-ranking noble handler, checking the provided map to navigate the complex urban terrain, getting a prompt to rappel down using a heavy rope, sliding down the line while the system guides his every step. Pausing mid-descent to consider if there is a faster way down, succumbing to his own curiosity by pressing the risky button, deciding that jumping early is definitely the more efficient route, letting go of the rope before he hits the ground, crashing into the street below with a force that kicks up dust. Jin Seo-jun brushes off the impact, realizing that his reckless shortcut was not exactly graceful, catching a notification that his stream is actually live to an audience. Viewers start flooding the chat with jokes about his total rookie status, realizing people are watching him fumble through the tutorial, wondering when his tiny stream suddenly gathered 4 active viewers, remembering Kim Tae-woo's advice to ignore the numbers and focus on his own gameplay, scrolling through the chaotic chat while questioning his viewers' bizarre usernames, recalling the specific instruction to focus on building a genuine connection with fans. Understanding that the smaller viewer count actually allows for real interaction, realizing that massive streams bury messages too fast to ever maintain a conversation, appreciating the intimate vibe of his current session compared to top-tier channels, deciding to keep his commentary casual as he gets back on track, answering a viewer's question about his account creation date with complete transparency, brushing off the chat's suggestion to go private, and finally moving toward his objective. Arriving at the imposing gates of Count Edora's estate under a blood-red moon, noting the eerie atmosphere and the unsettling sounds echoing from the mansion, debating whether to storm the front gate despite Christina's previous warnings, pulling out the note Christina left him to check for specific instructions, confirming Edora is located in the second-floor bedroom guarded by 20 men, gripping his weapon as he prepares to infiltrate the heavily fortified manor. Jin Seo-jun powers up his gauntlet, letting the blue energy crackle as he prepares to breach the estate, checking his gear and dismissing the basic tutorial weapons while eyeing his primary target inside, convinced that his simple blade is all he needs to finish this job quickly, ignoring the desperate warnings from Shin Ha-yeon as he charges straight toward the mansion entrance, questioning the sudden panic in the chat while Shin Ha-yeon frantically reminds him to follow Christina's note. Watching the stream feed fill with viewers predicting his immediate death, learning about the term rampage run from an interface pop-up, realizing that his decision to abandon stealth is a massive deviation from standard mission protocols, striking the first guard as the game mechanics trigger the high-difficulty alert, hearing the chat claim that clearing this tutorial with a rampage run is statistically impossible. Noticing that even the most hardcore veteran players have yet to document a successful attempt, finding the impossibility of the challenge more motivating than discouraging, recognizing the name Shin Ha-yeon appearing in the interface as a potential key to his success, pulling his hood low with a confident smirk, ready to test his own limits, stepping into the dark courtyard where the oppressive weight of the mansion looms ahead. Crossing the threshold while the massive blood-red moon provides the only light for his assault, feeling the immense pressure of the situation but choosing to feed off the viewer's doubt, monitoring the stream as the audience count spikes because of his reckless, entertaining gameplay, acknowledging the curious questions about Shin Ha-yeon's identity as he keeps moving forward, deciding that as long as he stays within his own boundaries, he can handle whatever comes next. Boots crunching against the stone floor as he closes the distance, alerting the armored guard who spins around to demand an immediate explanation, laughing off the stream chat's spam of death threats and cynical bets, dismissing the haters while the guard charges forward with a desperate war cry, drawing his blade just in time to meet the incoming steel, locking eyes with his opponent in the split second before the impact. Deflecting the heavy strike with precise timing to send sparks flying everywhere, watching the guard stumble back from the force of the redirected momentum, reading the deluge of disbelief scrolling across his live interface notifications, keeping his grip tight on the hilt while assessing the guard's next move, striking back with a clean hit that drains a massive chunk of health, observing the guard struggle to reconcile his defeat with the sudden counterattack. Maintaining his calm composure while the enemy closes in for another frantic rush, catching the second blade in a perfect parry that leaves the guard defenseless, ignoring the chat's spiraling panic as they witness the impossible sequence unfold, brushing off the claims of luck while he prepares to finish the job, stepping inside the guard's reach to deliver the final, crushing blow, slicing through the armor with a clean motion that ends the encounter. Watching the guard's health bar bottom out as he collapses to the ground, turning back to the stream to address the audience after the first victory. Jin Seojun reads the chat's confused reactions regarding his technical parry, acknowledging their disbelief while preparing to explain the mechanics of the move, highlighting how his innate timing makes high-level maneuvers look like effortless work, telling the stream to drop the questions and just watch his execution. Dismissing their pleas to stop fighting as he keeps his focus sharp, drawing out a simple diagram to show how perfect timing triggers a state of stagger, noting that even veteran pros found this specific system incredibly difficult to master, telling his viewers they should turn back now if they cannot handle the heat, warning them that staying will only lead to seeing him get completely wrecked, wondering why they are so obsessed with watching a potential disaster unfold. Realizing the chat refuses to leave despite his clear warnings about the danger, flashing back to his past life and the constant disrespect he faced as a nobody, remembering how his skills were always dismissed by disciples from the great sects, letting that old bitterness fuel his current resolve to prove them wrong again, turning his attention back to the line of elite guards blocking his path, gripping his weapon tight as he prepares to test his theory on these enemies. Charging forward without a second thought to put his combat philosophy into practice, closing the distance and reading the first guard's incoming attack with precision, shifting his stance at the last possible second to intercept the blade, landing a perfect hit that leaves the entire enemy squad in total confusion. Jin Seojun continues his relentless barrage of parries, overwhelming the guards with precise, high-speed counters that defy their expectations. His focus remains absolute as he carves through the remaining formation, each strike landing with lethal efficiency while the enemies struggle to mount a defense, forcing the final guards to realize they are completely outmatched, taunting the survivors to call for reinforcements if they ever hope to stop him, ignoring the chaotic chat messages flooding his interface about his sudden change in skill, slashing through the air one last time to dismantle the opposition. Taking a moment to catch his breath after clearing the entire group, confirming 6 enemies have been neutralized as he surveys the quiet hallway, checking the stream chat where viewers are frantically questioning his actual skill level, warning the more aggressive trolls in his comment section to pipe down, banning a persistent heckler from his channel with a single flick of his wrist, watching the chat descend into chaos over his decisive moderation. Reflecting on his own performance and whether this level of engagement is sustainable, recalling his former life as an aloof sword god who avoided the sex, remembering how his unmatched talent eventually drew unwanted attention from everyone, laughing off the memory of being pestered by persistent juniors in the past, shaking his head at the irony of his current situation compared to his previous existence. Turning back to the camera to address the viewers still obsessed with his godlike control, ignoring the spam of viewers demanding he explain his insane parry technique, giving a casual thumbs up while telling his audience to just reflect on his past, offering them a dry hint to watch the vertical attack trajectory more closely next time, finding the chat's growing hostility and accusation of him being a pro hilarious, noticing a fresh wave of enemies charging toward his position in the corridor. Standing his ground as the new squad of armored guards surrounds him, letting a confident smile slide onto his face while reading the taunts on screen, challenging the viewers to keep watching if they think his streak is just beginner's luck, hearing the guards scream for the intruder's head as they close the distance, pivoting his stance to prepare for the incoming rush of steel and iron, keeping his gaze locked on the lead attacker despite the overwhelming numbers. Intercepting the first guard's overhead strike with a clean, precise deflection, shifting his momentum immediately to counter the next assailant's follow-up swing, tracking every guard's movement with an intensity that matches his former sword god life, watching the chat go into absolute meltdown as the system feed tracks his streak, forcing the next armored guard to recoil after his blade is violently swatted aside, stepping into the guard's opening to maintain total control of the engagement. Locking blades with another soldier to break their guard and disrupt their formation, feeling the impact of the steel collision vibrate through his own weapon, executing a perfect sweep that sends the remaining guards stumbling back in defeat. Jin Seojun finally lets the mask slip as he finishes off the last guard, proving his skill while the internet loses its collective mind in real time. With one hardcore viewer named Id, Imkori's greatest assassin screaming in complete disbelief at the monitor, knowing this player as the legendary Dawn of the Assassination Squad fanatic, a guy who built his entire reputation on impossible stealth and high-stakes assassination runs, watching Seo-jun absolutely crush the hardest difficulty settings that broke everyone else, where every other top-tier player hit a wall of pure despair and game-over screens. Yet Seo-jun just casually posts mission completions after wrecking entire city blocks, leaving the forums in chaos as they try to process his insane playstyle, because even the most dedicated stalkers have been waiting 3 hours just to catch him, failing to find any other streamer even close to this level of hell difficulty mastery. And now the fan is losing his mind seeing a real rampage run unfold, as Jin Seo-jun moves through the ruins with the precision of a true predator, making the chat spam absolute madness as they realize they are witnessing history, flooding the interface with alerts about Seo-jun setting a new all-time record, while the surrounding battlefield littered with fallen armor proves the carnage is real, forcing the haters to crawl out and accuse him of using illegal cheats, though Seo-jun just brushes off the accusations while effortlessly dodging the next strike, ignoring the wall of salty messages from losers who cannot handle his dominance, and telling his chat he will just log off if they keep whining about his skill. Jin Seo-jun mocks his tiny audience of 6, barely impressed by their sudden arrival, before a massive explosion rocks the room and signals the real boss fight, the chat losing their minds as the encounter finally kicks off for real, Seo-jun sidestepping a lethal strike with movement so clean the viewers are confused, his reaction speed proving he is not just some keyboard warrior hacking the game. The boss laughing like a maniac while swinging his heavy flail at the player, who dashes forward to close the distance without showing a hint of hesitation, narrowly avoiding the sweeping iron ball that cracks the ground on impact, taking a small hit but barely flinching as he stays glued to his target, the boss sneering at the persistent kid who refuses to back down, mocking his technique while preparing to pulverize him into the stone floor. Yet Seo-jun only watches the boss's health bar and realizes he is fighting a tank, casually asking the chat if he should try parrying the flail for the fun of it, the boss screaming about his own strength while winding up for a massive blow, slamming the weapon down with enough force to shatter the entire arena floor, Seo-jun vaulting over the debris and diving back into the thick of the fray, closing the gap with a high-speed strike that forces the boss to scramble, who spins the flail into a defensive whirlwind to protect his own vitals, Seo-jun vaulting over the spinning chain to land a devastating counterattack and chipping away at the boss's health as the fight turns into a brutal war of attrition. Jin Seo-jun lands a solid strike, but the boss barely feels the impact. His attacks just are not cutting deep enough to end this fight quickly. Seo-jun wonders if he can even clear the room before the clock runs out. Then a sudden system notification reveals an instant fail condition if the boss survives 5 minutes. Panic sets in as the timer hits 4 minutes and 17 seconds, forcing him to deflect a desperate, heavy swing from the boss. While a spectator shouts a reminder to keep his eyes on the fight, Seo-jun realizes his current damage output will not beat the ticking clock, searching for a weak spot or a hidden trick as the timer bleeds away. The streamer known as Imkori's greatest assassin drops a hint to hammer the same spot. Taking the advice to heart, Seo-jun prepares to focus all his efforts on one point. He lunges forward with a precise strike into the boss's exposed armor, unleashing a flurry of attacks that finally start to crack the enemy's defenses, and the boss staggers as a massive chunk of his health bar vanishes. Seo-jun confirms the strategy works and keeps the pressure on with relentless speed. The boss growls in frustration, his grip tightening on the flail in defiance, knowing the 2-minute mark is coming. Seo-jun refuses to give him any breathing room. He clashes with the heavy chain, pushing the boss back with renewed intensity. The boss struggles to maintain control as his weapon starts to falter, until he tries to shove Seo-jun away, desperate to stop the incoming assault. Dodging the desperate shove, Jin Seo-jun plants a strike right into the boss. With just over a minute left on the clock, the boss takes a massive hit. Damage numbers flood the screen as Seo-jun shreds through the remaining health. The audience goes wild watching him push beyond human reaction speeds, cutting through the final sliver of defense with one fluid motion. Seo-jun realizes one last hit is all it takes to end this fight. 51 seconds remaining, and he lines up the finishing blow. Flashing steel arcs through the room, carving through the darkness, obliterating the boss's guard before he can even blink. The boss coughs up blood, spitting insults about the assassination squad, screaming that he refuses to die alone. The boss triggers a final explosive trap. The system logs the mission as clear, freezing the timer at the last second. Seo-jun clicks the mouse, finally ending the intense encounter while the stream chat erupts, labeling his performance a record-breaking parry massacre. Accolades pour in for being the first person in the universe to pull off that kill. A sudden realization hits Seo-jun as he watches the screen. Red magical circles manifest around him, pulsing with lethal energy. The room detonates in a massive fireball, consuming everything in its radius. Shielding himself from the blast, Seo-jun braces for the impact of the explosion. The boss's final act of spite, a self-destruction spell, threatens to take them both down. Voices ring out across the battlefield, targeting the assassin who just leveled the boss. Jin Seo-jun tracks the hostile movement, his focus sharpening as threats close in. Desperate pursuers give chase under the crimson moon, forcing him toward the edge of the world. Movement through the brush becomes a blur of motion as he avoids their reach. Steel flashes through the dark, narrowly missing him with lethal intent. Jin Seo-jun surveys the gap, realizing there is nowhere left to run. A projectile pierces his shoulder, throwing his balance into chaos. Gravity takes hold as he loses his footing on the cliffside. Plummeting into the abyss, he leaves his attackers behind in the cold night air, reaching out toward the moonlit sky. He accepts the fall as his only escape. Eyes locked on the horizon, Jin Seojun prepares for the final impact. Water breaks his descent, the impact surging through his battered frame. Daybreak arrives over the remote valley. Silence replacing the chaos of the hunt washed up on the riverbank. The broken assassin drags himself from the cold current. Fingers clutch the muddy earth, marking his survival against impossible odds. Boots tread heavily through the forest floor, signaling someone else is nearby. Shadows loom over the wreckage of the fight, watching the fallen warrior. A hooded figure approaches the unconscious Jin Seojun, hand extended in the stillness. Golden light glimmers from a relic held by the stranger, pulsating with ancient power. The screen shifts perspectives as the game system prepares to swap the active player. The player feed erupts with snarky comments about the predictable death-heavy cutscene, while the chat trolls the protagonist's lack of skills in the face of incoming arrows. Ignoring the noise, he snaps his hands together and brushes off the commentary, shifting his focus back to the game world to figure out his next move. A system prompt directs him toward the tavern for a crucial meeting with Christina. Crossing the threshold, the player finds himself dropped right in the middle of town. Standing outside the tavern doors, he steels himself for the interaction ahead. Stepping inside, the bustling atmosphere contrasts with the tension he feels within. Scanning the room, he spots Christina waiting alone near the bar, glowing with an aura of importance. She looks like exactly the person he needs. Catching her gaze, he realizes she is already aware of his presence. She breaks the silence with a cool inquiry about why he is bothering her. Leaning in, he drops the act and admits he has quite a lot to discuss. Auto mode kicks in as he pulls a small, glowing token from his inventory. Recognition flashes in her eyes the moment the item enters her field of vision. Her demeanor shifts instantly, the casual barrier crumbling at the sight of the relic. She demands to know his identity, the earlier indifference replaced by sharp suspicion. Taking a seat, he tells her to relax because his only goal is to provide aid. Flashing a deadly, crimson-eyed look, he drops the bombshell that he is an assassin, leaving her stunned. She asks if he is the mysterious operative from the West. Confirming his reputation, he notes that she knows exactly what his services cost. Raining gold coins in the background, he highlights his mercenary background. Pointing out that a true mercenary would never align with the cult, Christina finally yields, agreeing to trade names to keep the conversation moving. Introducing herself, she waits for his response as he hesitates to answer, prompting a system screen. The game demands he input a formal character name. Scrolling through chat suggestions, he ignores the ridiculous options popping up on his feed, deciding to stick with his real identity. He sets his streamer profile as Jin Seojun. Realizing the system defaulted to his actual name, he accepts that it is safe enough. Smirking at the potential confusion, he decides to go with a different alias instead, declaring his name is Nameless. He watches the chat explode with disbelief at his choice. Reading the roast from his viewers, he sees them mocking his lack of creativity. Explaining his past obsession with Murim-style naming trends, he defends the edgy title. Admitting he just thought it sounded cool at the time, he shrugs off the criticism, confirming the selection with a system click. He locks in the name Nameless, receiving a notification that he can now accept jobs. He watches Christina agree to the handle, handing over a small bird token. He establishes a secure way to communicate, pressing her for information. He demands to know the origin of the mysterious brooch. Revealing she buried the owner at the western docks, she provides a grim lead. Handing him a final contact item, she seals their new professional partnership. Catching the signal stone from Christina, Nameless pockets the item and prepares to depart. Watching her walk away, he mentally registers that his alias is now officially locked in. Stepping out into the evening air, he finds himself standing before the tavern's familiar silhouette. Exhaling a long sigh of relief, he acknowledges that his first day of streaming is finished. Scanning the chat as he walks, he ignores the persistent fans lobbying for a better name, signing off with a casual wave to the camera. He promises to return tomorrow evening. Stumbling over his final goodbye, he realizes he's still incredibly awkward in front of the lens. Fumbling with the stream interface, he worries about whether his progress actually saved correctly. Staring out at the digital skyline, he contemplates the sheer scale of the world ahead. Noticing his finger hovering over the in-stream button, he confirms all 6 viewers finally logged off. Drifting back into reality, he finds the stream's cute mascot animations fading into the void. Catching a sudden notification chime, he pauses to see a new message hitting his feed. Seeing a user named Lightathefuture enter the chat, he wonders how anyone is still active. Watching the notification bar glow, he is confused by the sudden surge of late-night activity. Pulling his phone out to check the system logs, he finds the incoming traffic completely inexplicable. Scrolling through his empty feed, he questions what kind of content he should even prepare next. Hearing the door burst open behind him, he nearly drops his phone in sheer panic. Seeing Kim Taewoo storming into his room, he recoils from the unexpected confrontation. Watching Kim Taewoo frantically grab the device, he realizes his friend is looking at something urgent. Reading the flooded notification screen together, they see his closed stream is still somehow trending. Staring at the screen in disbelief, he struggles to process the numbers climbing in real time. Kim Taewoo points out the viral potential, noting that 30 likes are basically a drop in the ocean. Pacing the room, Kim Taewoo insists that hitting the front page is now a mathematical certainty. Grinning at the prospect of a massive follower spike, he remains skeptical of the hype. Shrugging off the excitement, he tries to force Kim Tae-woo out the door so he can get some rest. Collapsing onto his bed, he finds it impossible to ignore the persistent buzzing of his smartphone, checking a new promotional recommendation. He realizes the algorithm is pushing his own content aggressively. Tapping the screen to investigate, he decides he'll deal with the fallout tomorrow morning. Watching the view count tick upward on the video player, he observes the engagement metrics skyrocketing. Questioning why the audience is so hooked, he starts analyzing the strange AI combat footage. Seeing the AI relentlessly punish an opponent's mistake, he recognizes the brutal efficiency of the programming. Focusing on the cold, robotic precision of the fighter, he finds the movement style eerily familiar. Witnessing the AI taunting a defeated player in the middle of a match, he cringes at the sheer audacity, noting how the AI refuses to let up even when the opponent begs to surrender. He realizes why viewers are obsessed. Slamming his head onto the desk in frustration, he regrets the chaotic personality he accidentally gave the bot. Rubbing his temples, he contemplates the unfair reality of his grinding efforts being overshadowed by this viral clip. Reading the harsh comments about his toxic player persona, he wonders if he's ruined his reputation already. Catching a stray comment asking if this is the real Nameless, he realizes his secret identity is leaking. Watching his follower count jump to 400, he understands that the stream's popularity is spiraling out of control. Pondering the massive discrepancy between his views and his actual live audience, he suspects the system is hiding something deeper. Jin Seo-jun taps the start button, wondering if anyone will actually show up. The system broadcast hits the network, signaling that his stream is officially live. Setting the stage in the city of Altion, he prepares for a new session. Notifications start flooding his HUD immediately, lighting up the screen with incoming viewer activity. Reading the chat, he clarifies that this is not Joem's channel and disavows the drama. A fan demands an explanation for his recent combat moves, leaving him genuinely confused. Noticing a notification for his first real donation, he pauses to acknowledge the supporter. Scrolling through a barrage of conflicting messages, he sees viewers arguing over his teaching style. Realizing his initial response was a bit dismissive, he decides to step up his game. Demonstrating a quick combat tip, he explains how hitting weak points ruins an enemy's posture. Scanning the massive list of requests, he starts sorting through what his audience wants. Flashing a smirk, he tells the chat he has a better idea for warming up. Deciding to show off some classic pickpocketing skills, he heads into the crowded city streets. Walking through the bustling market district, he scouts the area for his next target. Bumping into a distracted passerby, he makes his move with practiced, smooth precision. Catching the man off guard, he creates enough of a distraction to secure the goods. Ignoring the guy's grumbling protest, he keeps his focus entirely on the job at hand. Brushing off the angry pedestrian's complaints, he barely acknowledges the minor confrontation. Melting back into the shadows of the alley, he stays completely undetected by the crowd. Holding up the stolen pouch, he confirms a perfect streak of 3 successful pickpockets in a row. Reading the chat's wild theories about his background, he just laughs off the Murim rumors. Ignoring the fan jokes about buying luxury condos, he keeps his eyes on the game. Watching the loot notifications stack up, he knows this run is getting profitable fast. Suddenly interrupted by a voice from the shadows, he turns to find he has been spotted. 2 local thugs step out to corner him. Clearly not fans of his recent work. Questioning his activities with a smug grin, they demand to know what he is up to. Claiming he needs a permit to operate here, they try to shake him down. Holding up the stolen goods, he asks if they really want to play this game. Realizing his massive haul is catching attention, the chat starts blowing up with warnings. Checking the stream's chaotic feed, he ignores the backseat gamers and keeps his composure. Hearing heavy boots hitting the pavement nearby, he realizes the guards are closing in. Scanning the immediate area for an exit, he spots the pursuers drawing their steel. Dousing the lights to cover his tracks, he prepares for a quick getaway. Realizing he is boxed in by the patrol, he searches for a secondary path out. Squeezing through a narrow gap in the architecture, he tries to stay out of sight. Leaving nothing but a flickering candle behind, he vanishes into the dark. Watching his back as the guards search the corridor, he stays perfectly still. Shifting focus to the bigger picture, he recalls the rulers and their iron grip on Altion. Pondering the mystery of the queen, he knows she is key to the district's secrets. Tracking the Tower Master's influence, he realizes just how deep the conspiracy actually goes. Jin Seo-jun studies the chessboard, weighing the influence of the royalist leader. Turning his attention to the disassembler boss, he locks onto the figure known as Drake. Analyzing the map, he notes how Drake notoriously spawns in unpredictable locations. Securing the disassembler's secret map through a trade, he prepares to hunt the target. Laughing at the massive donation, Alpaca vows to clear a rampage run for his master. Accepting the viewer's challenge to stand by his claims, he doubles down on the bet. Ignoring the incoming wave of chat mockery, he keeps his eyes on the objective. Dismissing the doubters who think he is bluffing, he readies his next move. Pretending to be unfazed by the roasting chat, he clears his throat to regain control. Receiving another massive donation, he pauses to process the sheer scale of the support. 30 minutes pass since his bold declaration, and the pressure starts mounting. Moving through the quiet streets, he keeps a low profile to avoid the patrol. Monitoring the feed, Kim Tae-woo questions where the target is actually leading them. Deciding to tail the suspect, he tracks the movement through the city's underbelly. Reading the chat's confusion about the gang, he wonders if they are truly formidable. Catching the drift of the stream's chaos, He realizes the difficulty of the quest. Watching the live feed explode with laughter, he sees the target land a perfect parry. Reading the latest donation note about killing a ruler, he grows visibly concerned. Recalling the guide he studied last night, he tries to make sense of the strategy. Doubting the reliability of the current intel, he prepares for the chaos ahead. Brushing off the viewer's warnings about his lack of strategy, he insists on keeping things simple, pointing a finger to emphasize his point. He claims he will not even need to worry about paybacks. Confronting the thugs in a dark alley, he demands they return everything they stole, calling out the duo for the wallet they lifted earlier. He refuses to let them slide, watching the chat react to his audacity. He stays focused on the confrontation unfolding before him, poking his chest while mocking his hearing. One of the thugs tries to intimidate him, laughing at the perceived weakness. The leader mocks his stoic demeanor as pure fear. Letting the taunts wash over him, he makes it clear that their playful attitude is about to end, demanding to know Drake's current location. He ignores their smug remarks about their boss, questioning his sanity for even asking. The thug refuses to spill any information, clenching his fist tight. He decides that words have officially run their course, flashing a dangerous grin. He warns them that the punching is about to start. Dismissing his threat as ridiculous, the thugs look at each other in genuine confusion, ordering his men to teach the kid a lesson. The leader initiates the fight, dodging the initial rush with ease. He counters by closing the distance instantly, sweeping through the group with precision. He forces the thugs to scramble back in panic, lunging forward with a blade drawn. One of the thugs attempts a desperate strike, catching the blade midair. He maintains his focus despite the sudden escalation. Redirecting the force of the attack, he disarms his opponent before they can react. Driving a powerful blow into his target, he proves that his strategy is far from empty. The thug reels back as Jin Seo-jun lands a crippling blow. A massive arc of energy follows, slicing through the remaining defenses. Seo-jun holds the momentum, his blade cutting through the air with lethal precision. Another thug lunges forward in a blind rage, screaming threats at him. Parrying the strike, Seo-jun deflects the blow with a sharp metallic clash. The attacker stumbles back, realizing he is completely outclassed in this exchange. Cold intensity radiates from Seo-jun's eyes, pinning his opponent to the spot, driving the point of his weapon home. He forces the thug onto the defensive, sidestepping the desperate counter. Seo-jun remains perfectly composed amidst the chaos. Standing alone in the debris, he surveys the wreckage of the gang. System notifications scroll by, mocking the thugs for their pathetic attempt at resistance. The leader struggles to his feet, cursing the kid for his sheer brutality. Trembling with a mix of pain and fear, he realizes his men are finished. Looming over him, Seo-jun demands Drake's location with a blade still pressed close. Sputtering in defiance, the leader still refuses to give up his boss. Wide-eyed and terrified, the man watches his weapon being rendered useless. Looming closer, Seo-jun repeats his demand, leaving no room for further games. System alerts note the thug is too incapacitated to even form a coherent sentence. Taunting comments flash across the screen as the gang's spirit completely shatters. Finally breaking under the pressure, the thug whispers the location of 13th Street. Jin Seo-jun pockets the intel, completely ignoring the chaotic stream chat blowing up his feed. Viewers are losing their minds over the absolute carnage they just witnessed on screen, dodging the digital noise. He keeps his focus sharp and his eyes on the prize. Tossing the useless dagger aside, Jin Seo-jun decides he needs a more reliable weapon. Scanning the surroundings for an upgrade, he spots something tucked away in the shadows, grabbing the new gear. A satisfied grin spreads across his face as he tests the weight. Steel sings as he draws the long blade, testing its reach against the dim light. Shifting his stance, Jin Seo-jun prepares to clear out the remaining obstacles in the room. Pivoting with lethal precision, he launches a devastating strike into the heart of the fray. Crimson arcs follow the path of his swing. Cutting through the defensive lines instantly, momentum carries him forward, the blade carving a clean path through the desperate guards. Steps are cleared in seconds, leaving a trail of broken bodies littering the landing. Energy hums along the edge of the weapon as he prepares for the final push. Mockery from the system monitors continues to scroll, but he tunes out the nonsense, laughing off the absurdity of his situation. He readies himself for the next wave. Light flares from the weapon, signaling a surge of power that cracks the very air. Concentration locks in as he channels his focus into a single pinpoint strike. Unleashing the technique, Jin Seo-jun shatters the incoming projectiles before they can even touch him. Eyes narrowed, he watches the energy dissipate into nothingness under his sheer control. Standing amidst the debris, he surveys the wreckage, ready to hunt down his true target. Vaulting over the debris, Jin Seo-jun narrowly avoids the incoming barrage. Glowing projectiles trace lethal arcs through the air, forcing him into a defensive dance. Viewers spam the chat, losing their minds over his reflexes. Stepping into the main hall, he finally comes face to face with the boss. Drake offers a mocking compliment before tightening his grip on his blades, taunting him with a flurry of daggers. The disassembler boss prepares to test his limits. Purple energy lashes out like whips, tearing through the floorboards toward his position. Dodging the initial strike, he barely has time to breathe before the next volley. Metal blades rain down from above, turning the entire room into a killing zone. Keeping his cool, Jin Seo-jun tracks every single trajectory despite the overwhelming odds. Spinning his weapon into a defensive screen, he deflects the swarm with rhythmic precision. Metallic clangs echo through the chamber as he bats away the incoming steel. Sparks shower the floor where the projectiles slam into the ground. Debris flies as Drake keeps up the relentless pressure, trying to pin him down. Watching the defensive display, Drake realizes this target is far more capable than expected. Jin Seo-jun flashes a confident smirk, clearly enjoying the chaos while the viewers hype him up. Clearing his throat, Drake pauses the assault to ask for his opponent's identity, flatly refusing to reveal anything. He dismisses the question with a cold stare, chuckling at the blunt response. Drake decides that strength is the only language worth speaking. Shifting his stance, the boss prepares to unleash a much deadlier technique to end the game. Drake lunges into the fray with his chain blades fully unleashed, slamming the heavy weapons down to force Jin Seo-jun onto the defensive. Sliding across the arena floor, the challenger narrowly pivots to avoid the crushing impact. Steel whips through the air in a blur of lethal motion, tearing up the ground where Jin Seo-jun stood only a heartbeat before. Spinning out of the path of the chain, he maintains his footing, dodging the wide arc of the blade as Drake mocks his previous fighting style. Narrowing his eyes, Jin Seo-jun recognizes the true nature of this brutal combat system. Realizing the weapon's range is the real reason no one can clear this stage. Observing the carnage, the livestream chat erupts over the sheer intensity of the encounter, taunting his opponent. Drake challenges him to close the distance. Charging headlong into the fray, the boss aims to finish this with overwhelming force. Meeting the onslaught head-on, Jin Seo-jun parries the incoming strikes with surgical precision. Sparks shower the room as he redirects the energy of the heavy blades. Countering the momentum, he forces Drake to retreat to find a new angle. Viewers flood the chat, baffled by the defensive display against such impossible odds. Noting the difficulty of the pattern, Jin Seo-jun identifies a flaw in the rhythm. Channeling his focus, he recalls the brutal trials of the Blade Mountain. Finding the singular opening in the defensive chain, he prepares to strike. Calling the boss's bluff, Jin Seo-jun finally steps into the danger zone. Drake sneers, convinced that a simple opening is all he needs to end the exchange. But Jin Seo-jun crashes into his guard with enough force to rattle the entire arena. The boss staggers back, visibly shaken as his ironclad defenses begin to falter. Recognizing that a standard parry only buys seconds against a threat of this caliber, those floating chain weapons attempt to weave a barrier around the boss once again. Ignoring the lethal reach of the chains, Jin Seo-jun remains entirely unfazed by the threat, gripping his blade with lethal intent. He prepares to bypass the boss's armor entirely. Breathing deeply, the focus shifts to the foundational technique mastered through years of practice. Repeating the same movement until it becomes instinct, he plants his feet firmly on the ground, transferring kinetic energy from his lower body to his core in one fluid motion. Shifting into a high guard, the aura around his weapon flares with a violent, concentrated light matching the boss's reach. Jin Seo-jun closes the gap with a single, decisive strike. The power behind the swing surges, overwhelming the boss's desperate attempt to recover. Connecting flush against the target, the blade finds the only unprotected point on the boss's head, sending the boss reeling. The sheer force of the impact shatters the surrounding defensive chains. The livestream chat goes wild as viewers witness the boss being taken down with ease. Testing the feel of the virtual avatar, he realizes that the hardware limitations are negligible. Analyzing the mechanics of his own movement, he breaks down the efficiency of the footwork. Every rotation and arc of the limb serves a singular purpose in reaching the optimal form, proving that skill transcends the vessel. Jin Seo-jun stands victorious with the same lethal precision. Jin Seo-jun catches a chain midair, his focus entirely on the boss's next desperate gambit. A massive arc of energy slashes through the room, forcing him to shift his stance. The boss spits venomous threats while the chains coil around him like a swarm of vipers. Throwing everything into one final assault, the boss launches a wave of dark, jagged iron. Jin Seo-jun maneuvers with effortless grace. Sliding beneath the reach of the incoming death dealer, surging forward, he closes the distance before the boss can even blink. Impact rings out as he drives a strike deep into the boss's remaining defenses, shattering the ground beneath their feet. His blade forces a total collapse of the enemy's formation. Stepping into the chaos, he plants his boots firmly on the broken stone floor, reveling in the rhythm of the blade. Jin Seo-jun treats this lethal encounter like a playground, acknowledging the visceral thrill. He knows this mastery is the only tether to his past life. Channeling every ounce of his experience, he prepares the finishing blow with blinding intensity, summoning a blade of pure light. He readies the strike that will end the fight. Raising the weapon high, he looms over the fallen boss with cold, surgical intent. Descending in a brilliant flash of power, the strike cleaves through the boss's final resistance. The boss lies broken as the system registers the end of the dungeon's master. Clearing the encounter, Jin Seo-jun receives his first major reward. The Shard of Order notifications flood the screen, showcasing the massive influx of donations and fan hysteria from the chat. Noticing the viewer count skyrocketing, he is genuinely blindsided by the sudden surge in popularity. The name of the Baekryun troop flashes on his screen, marking the beginning of a larger conflict. Jin Seo-jun stares at the interface, completely floored by the explosion in his viewer count. 447 people are watching, somehow surpassing his entire follower base in one go. Struggling to process the fame, he just blankly stares at the glowing notification screen. A faint blush creeps up his neck as the reality of the situation sinks in. Remembering Kim Tae-woo's advice to stay humble, he tries to shake off the sudden ego boost. Despite the stern warnings, he can't help but crack a small, satisfied smirk, confirming another clean clear. He watches the chat go absolutely feral with praise. Donations keep pouring in, with one fan dropping 10,000 won just for that pipe kill. Looking down at the weapon, he realizes his crude pipe has officially become his trademark. Viewers analyze his combat style, marveling at how he managed a boss clear without any buffs, giving a quick shout-out. He acknowledges the generous donor while keeping his focus, pausing to scan the empty surroundings. He realizes something feels off about the scene, questioning the absence of the city guards. He surveys the abandoned, ruins-filled area. Realizing the authorities are nowhere to be found, he jokes about how they only appear for petty crimes. Deciding there is no reason to linger, he prepares to make his exit. Stepping out of the dungeon, he is greeted by the fading glow of the evening sky walking down the quiet street. He moves through the city under the cover of dusk, deep in thought. He contemplates his current status and the path ahead, leaping across the rooftops. He vanishes into the urban sprawl with practiced ease. Halting his movement, he senses an unfamiliar presence watching from the shadows. Landing softly in the street, he finds himself face to face with the mysterious observer. Christina reveals she has been tracking his progress ever since the job on Drake, tossing a heavy pouch of currency toward him as payment for his interference. She insists he takes the reward for helping break the local oppression, gaining both reputation and gold. He catches the bag with a bewildered look. Questioning why he is getting paid when he never even signed a contract, Chet goes wild over the confusion, mocking his lack of interest in the payout, asking where he should head next. He looks to her for any direction, smiling back at him. She offers no clear answers to his wandering plans, declaring she is moving on. Christina walks away into the golden evening light, watching her silhouette fade into the distance. He stands alone on the quiet road. Turning his attention back to the reality of the situation, he ponders his next move, chuckling at the thought of calling that chaotic mess a successful assassination. Viewers flood the feed with questions about the messy nature of his recent work. Deciding the stream has reached its peak, he prepares to log off for the day, announcing the end of the broadcast. He ignores the pleas for him to keep playing, dashing away from the terminal. He moves with frantic speed to escape the chat. Waving a final goodbye to the screen, he shuts down the connection for good, pulling the headset off. He finally kicks back in his gaming chair with a sigh, waking up to the hum of his real-world room. He finds himself back in his own skin. Startled out of his post-stream relaxation, Jin Seo-jun finds Kim Tae-woo lounging in his room, dismissing the intrusion with a shrug. Kim Tae-woo claims he was just catching the stream. Physical bickering erupts between them until the feed finally cuts to a brief intermission. Once the chaos settles, Kim Tae-woo checks in to see how the broadcast actually performed. Admitting the numbers were decent, Jin Seo-jun scrolls through his phone to gauge the reaction. Snatching the device away, Kim Tae-woo demands to see what the viewers are really saying, playing back the recorded footage. They watch the intense confrontation with Drake unfold once more. Analyzing the footage, Kim Tae-woo notes how badly the enemy struggled under pressure. Browsing through the community forums, they see the internet is already buzzing about the mysterious player, scrolling past wild theories. Jin Seo-jun stops on a thread asking about those unknown shards of order, searching for any official data. He finds a total vacuum of information on the item. Puzzled by the lack of documentation, Jin Seo-jun wonders if the item is exclusive to Rampage mode. Ignoring the hate comments filling up the chat feed, he keeps his eyes on the prize, laughing off the negativity. Kim Tae-woo reminds him that fame always brings a few trolls. Questioning if the spotlight is worth the headache, Jin Seo-jun weighs the cost of being known, pointing out the massive gap between stream viewers and forum lurkers. Kim Tae-woo corrects his perspective, showing him the actual reach of his actions. Kim Tae-woo highlights the 10,000 people now watching. Realizing his influence has quietly exploded, Jin Seo-jun struggles to process the scale of his reach. Turning back to the screen, he begins to grasp the reality of his new standing. Reading the latest viral article, Jin Seo-jun sees his own legend starting to take root. Scanning through the latest viral clips, Jin Seo-jun finds a fan-made tribute calling him Alpaca. Watching the comments roll in, he sees viewers pledging absolute loyalty to his master-level gameplay. Amused by the sudden fan devotion, Jin Seo-jun shares the clip with Kim Tae-woo for a laugh. Catching the name drop, Kim Tae-woo looks up from his own phone in total confusion, asking why the internet is suddenly obsessed with some guy named Alpaca. Kim Tae-woo admits he's actually done collabs with him. Sensing an opportunity, Jin Seo-jun tells Kim Tae-woo he needs a massive favor regarding this connection. Meanwhile, the streamer known as Alpaca is hitting yet another game over screen on his 13th attempt. Reading the brutal chat comments, he sees the audience mocking his pathetic bare hands challenge attempt. Wallowing in the negativity, the guy laments that he should have just stuck to his usual assassination runs. Noticing something unusual in the lobby, Alpaca pauses to investigate a sudden notification, finding a gift from his fans. He discovers a cute llama mascot waiting in the lobby, petting the adorable creature. Alpaca finds a temporary reprieve from his frustrating losing streak. Trying to introduce his new friend to the stream, he gets a face full of spit for his troubles. Wiping the llama spit off his face, Alpaca sighs at how things never seem to go his way, ignoring the chat telling him to stop messing around. He prepares for another grueling round, seeing a massive donation pop up on his screen. He can't believe someone actually thinks he cleared the stage, questioning if the donation is a joke. Alpaca stares at the system notification in total disbelief. Clicking the link title, he finds a video titled Drake Rampage that claims to show a successful clear. Suspecting a malicious prank or scam to ruin his reputation, he glares at the suspicious link, loading the video to expose the fake. He finally sees the real footage of Jin Seo-jun dominating the challenge. Watching the footage, Alpaca realizes this nameless player actually managed to solo a boss. Seeing the record breaking clear on his own screen, he stares at the user's handle. Getting a sudden message notification, he wonders who would reach out during his stream, jumping as the alert pops up. He grumbles at the intrusion while trying to focus. Glancing at the incoming message, he realizes it is coming directly from the mysterious Nameless. Reading the request from Kim Tae-woo, he sees an offer to discuss this nameless player. Shifting the scene to Moviesoft Korea, the corporate headquarters looms over the city skyline. Sipping his morning coffee, the CEO reflects on the start of a busy day. Eve Fimo enjoys the peace of his office before the incoming chaos disrupts his routine. Savoring the aroma of his drink, he remains completely unaware of the digital firestorm brewing, bursting into the room without warning. A frantic employee shatters the quiet atmosphere, yelling at the newcomer for his lack of manners. Eve Fimo demands an immediate explanation. Listening to the subordinate's report, he quickly realizes the severity of the situation at hand. Learning that a ruler-class entity has been eliminated, the CEO drops his casual demeanor. Hearing about the total rampage clear, Eve Fimo processes the reality of their security failure, identifying the victim as Drake. He realizes the implications for the game's delicate balance. Watching the other rulers mock the fallen Drake, he understands their arrogance is misplaced. Dismissing the loss as inevitable, Eve Fimo shows no sympathy for the deceased ruler. Questioning how this affects the collection of shards, his subordinate expresses growing concern, reminding his employee that he designed the system controls. The CEO remains dangerously confident. The Shard of Order remains locked behind a specific route, mocking players who think a standard rampage clear is enough to claim it. Because certain core rulers demand a hidden skill that nobody has actually unlocked yet, keeping that vital power sealed behind a grind wall designed for maximum frustration, forcing even the most dedicated grinders to stare at a system-mandated break screen, while the forums go nuclear with users frantically crowdsourcing the secret to obtaining it, leaving the community desperate for any shred of intel on the impossible requirement. Despite the noise, a coworker points out that a streamer just went live with the answer, catching his superior off guard with the claim that the solution is already being broadcast. Demanding to know how he could possibly be watching streams during office hours, and narrowly dodging a docked paycheck by pleading for a look at the footage, prompting a begrudging pause in the workday to see what the hype is about, as they wonder if the streamers are actually collecting all the necessary shards. Hearing whispers of a collaboration that could change the entire landscape of the game, and realizing the broadcast is happening right under their noses, displaying Alpaca's official announcement for a massive collaboration event on the mobile screen, while Suhan tries to clear up the confusion regarding this sudden high-profile guest, emphasizing that this is not some low-tier streamer jumping on a trend, but the arrival of a featured master taking the center stage in the digital arena. Leaving everyone stunned as the reality of the collab hits with full force. Dismissing the assassin game as nothing more than petty trash and brushing off a request to borrow a capsule for the upcoming guest, while questioning how a so-called master could possibly have such a low sync rate, retreating into his room to focus solely on the collaboration stream, noticing for the first time just how much this kid has changed, realizing that if a rampage was possible with faulty equipment, then the real-life power of this mystery player is far beyond comprehension. Watching the feed as a knife-wielding character demands an easy match, and scrambling to prepare for the collaboration with growing unease, catching a sudden notification chime that demands his immediate attention, as a new face appears on screen introducing himself to the audience, revealing the player is none other than Jin Seo-jun, looking suspiciously better than any natural avatar could possibly manage, and leaving the viewers baffled by the sheer quality of his character edit, with the stream production team going into overdrive to keep up, as Kim Tae-woo finally arrives to meet up with the star, guiding the group through the virtual space to get the show moving, and scanning the surroundings to get a feel for the setup, observing the stark contrast between the ordinary exterior and this high-end interior, and finally seeing the professional-grade gear of a veteran streamer in action. Jin Seo-jun settles in as the offer for coffee turns into a friendly gesture, while Kim Tae-woo keeps the banter rolling with some lighthearted, immediate roasting, and Seo-jun barely registers the jabs, keeping his focus on the room ahead, meeting Lee Suhan, the manager and editor, who steps forward to introduce himself, confirming their roles as they exchange names and get down to business, though Lee Suhan immediately pivots the conversation toward the competitive scene, pointing out the gap between Seo-jun's performance and his supposedly low sync rate, questioning how someone who just started playing could possibly be this effective, leaving Seo-jun to play coy with a vague, cryptic response about his history, while the rest of the crew watches on, clearly skeptical of his sudden rise, until Seo-jun admits he actually put in time 7 years ago, causing the group to pause as they process that timeline. And Lee Suhan presses for details on his past competitive ranking, getting a blunt confession that he was only at the silver level back then, which Lee Suhan flatly rejects, refusing to believe such a skill jump is possible, so he proposes an immediate trip to the training grounds to verify the truth, with Kim Tae-woo jumping in to question why they need to force an evaluation. But the manager insists on testing Seo-jun's abilities firsthand, leaving Seo-jun to challenge the assumption that he's destined for a loss, and Kim Tae-woo just shakes his head, already sensing the inevitable disaster coming their way. Jin Seo-jun finally decides to drop the act, warning Kim Tae-woo to stay back and stop hovering, as he suggests skipping the low-level training for something much harder, leaving the spectators to realize exactly who they are watching, since the mysterious player known only as Unknown is right in front of them. With Seo-jun tearing through the simulation with clinical, brutal efficiency, and his movements carving through the challenge like a hot blade, until every single target is dismantled in a blur of motion, leaving Kim Tae-woo and the crew staring at the screen in pure disbelief, because the sheer gap in skill is impossible to ignore, while the gameplay replay confirms he did not even get tagged once, prompting a cocky remark from Seo-jun that they need 80 more years of practice. Which has his friends absolutely losing their minds over how cool that was, although Seo-jun remains unfazed and keeps his focus sharp, until Kim Tae-woo finally calls his name to address the elephant in the room, and Seo-jun turns around, acting like he did not just break the entire leaderboard, while Lee Soo-han realizes he has been completely wrong about this guy's potential. So the team rushes towards Seo-jun to demand an explanation for that performance. With Lee Soo-han immediately bowing down to treat him as a senior, and the group swarms him in a wild display of newfound respect. Jin Seo-jun looks completely caught off guard by their sudden change in attitude, and Kim Tae-woo immediately tries to buddy up by offering him honorary older brother status, but Jin Seo-jun just brushes it off, insisting they stick to their actual ages regardless of rank, while the others start teasing him about his awkward reaction and goofy expression, which only makes them poke more fun at his expense to lighten the mood. Although the sudden mention of 7 years ago brings back a specific memory, as Jin Seo-jun realizes they are starting to piece together his secret past, before someone cuts the tension to remind them about the upcoming broadcast schedule, so the group pivots quickly to ensure Jin Seo-jun is ready for his stream, and he scrambles to get moving once he realizes how little time is left. While lingering doubts about his own overthinking start to cloud his mind again, until Jin Seo-jun shakes it off to head toward the gaming setup with the crew, and Kim Tae-woo practically drags him toward the capsule to get him comfortable, with the whole team scrambling around to facilitate his big return to the spotlight. As the anticipation builds among the group waiting for the feed to go live, then the chat explodes instantly the moment the stream signal finally connects. Because the fans have clearly been waiting for this exact moment for ages, and the streamer greets his massive audience with a bright and practiced smile, while Kim Tae-woo checks the phone, making sure they stay on top of the comments, so the banter kicks off immediately with the usual mix of support and friendly trash talk. Jin Seo-jun catches a fan trying to derail the vibe with some alpaca nonsense, and he immediately shuts that down with a playful, high-energy counterattack. While the chat keeps pushing for that infamous clear or die promise, so he jokingly threatens to ban anyone bringing up that specific challenge today, but he can't help but lean into the chaos when the audience keeps pressing, and the energy spikes as Jin Seo-jun suddenly pivots to a surprise rampage run, with the stream atmosphere turning electric the moment he initiates the session. Then he dramatically introduces a mysterious master to guide his gameplay. Though a sudden, awkward silence hits the stream as he waits for his guest, while the spotlight stays fixed on an empty stool, signaling that something is off, and the viewers start spamming questions, wondering if the collab is actually happening, with Jin Seo-jun looking genuinely confused as he stares at his own interface. So the chat begins to panic, fearing the entire setup was just a massive troll, and he scrambles to figure out why his guest has not joined the call yet. Until a notification pops up, revealing a message that changes everything in an instant, because it's clearly not the phone collab they were all expecting to see, with the tension peaking as a mysterious system alert takes over the screen, and Jin Seo-jun reads the incoming message, his expression shifting from confusion to shock while the chat loses its mind debating whether this is a scripted bit or real, so Jin Seo-jun is left totally speechless, wondering how this just went so sideways. The mystery guest finally shows up, and surprisingly it's just a guy with an alpaca avatar, introducing himself as Jin Seo-jun, the streamer who's supposedly here to turn things around, settling into the hay as they joke about his status as a total beginner, while the chat flames him hard for needing help from someone so inexperienced, and the viewer count spikes to 19,000 as the toxicity levels go through the roof, with the game punishing him with a sudden damage spike for buying a shiny new gear, leaving the alpaca-themed guest to just laugh at his expense while managing the chaotic stream, noting how different streamers handle their fanbases, from the drill sergeant types to the ones who keep it clean, though he admits he prefers this kind of loose, unpredictable vibe on air, before bluntly telling Jin Seo-jun that his skills are honestly pretty terrible. Clapping his hands together to move past the awkward roast and get back to business, bringing up that lucky win against Drake as the only reason he's still in the clear, catching a fat donation from a fan who's calling him out for needing a beginner's help, and Jin Seo-jun cannot help but crack up, even though the guest is clearly annoyed, admitting that maybe he is a little responsible for the mess the guy is currently in. Reflecting on how absurd it is to clear a Drake-level threat on only his second day, while the system keeps trolling him with insult-driven notifications about his impossible situation, noticing that Jin Seo-jun does not look rattled at all despite the sheer scale of the audience, realizing that the guy is actually having the time of his life out there, so he decides to just lean into it and asks his newfound professor to carry him through. Jin Seo-jun agrees to the plan, keeping his energy high for the stream, starting with a live coaching session where he'll walk the guest through a run, But then he drops a second secret segment focused on a brutal rampage challenge, which immediately leads to a heated debate over why his skill points are completely unspent, leaving the guest genuinely bewildered that anyone would try to grind this game barehanded. While Jin Seojun casually admits he's never bothered with skills and wonders if they're mandatory, triggering a hilarious meltdown from the guest over that blank panicked look he gets, as the guy demands an explanation for his blatant neglect of basic character progression, so Jin Seojun just smiles, confessing he never actually needed them to clear the content, causing the chat to explode with fans calling his barehanded style the new gold standard. Though even he's starting to sweat as the viewer count hits 25,000 and climbing, quickly shifting the topic back to the mechanics behind his bizarre, skillless combat style, playing a clip that shows him aggressively dismantling an opponent's gear in real time, where he systematically targets the structural integrity of his enemy's blade with perfect timing, applying pressure until the metal finally buckles under the sheer force of his strikes, shattering the weapon into pieces and leaving his bewildered opponent completely defenseless, revealing the system notification for a quest to break 10 weapons using this specific method, which leaves the audience spamming the chat with confusion over how he makes this work. But he just points out that finding a weapon's weak point is all you really need, proving that if you break 10 items this way, you unlock the powerful weak point detection skill. Jin Seojun confirms he's only found 2 of these mysterious knots so far, pointing to the broken rapier from the earlier clip as the first confirmed example, while the second one was snagged from a random NPC side quest longsword, leaving the chat completely baffled about what the weak point detection skill actually does. But Jin Seojun drops the bombshell that he's the only one who knows the truth, claiming he has cracked the secret logic behind these hidden game mechanics. And the stream goes wild as he hypes up his discovery to the thousands watching, deciding to turn the tide by challenging the viewers to a high-stakes betting game, where the channel point system starts raining rewards onto the active participants, explaining that these points are not just for show but unlock real influence over the stream. So he launches a new prediction event based on how many knots he can find, forcing the audience to decide if he's a genius or just another player chasing hype, and Kim Tae-woo steps in to clarify the confusing jargon of safe lines versus underdogs, breaking down the risk-reward ratio for the viewers eager to dump their points, while the betting odds clearly show most people doubting he can find more than 3, though Jin Seojun doubles down on the chaos by pushing for a massive 100 times payout. And a massive donation from a top fan signals total confidence in his wild claim, leaving Kim Tae-woo shaking his head at the sheer scale of the bet, as the system officially initiates the dawn of the Assassination Squad challenge, setting the stage for a dangerous night mission under the moonlight. Jin Seojun gasps for air as the pressure of the mission hits home, while a nameless noble looms over his prey with a blade drawn and the victim begs for mercy on the cold stone only to be mocked, until the sword flashes down, ending the plea with a brutal, clean strike, and this sadistic noble dares the fallen kid to run for his life, revealing his identity as Lewis Neville to the horrified onlookers watching the stream, confirming he is the heir to the northeastern edge while the chat goes wild. Then the scene shifts to a mentor and student observing the carnage unfold, where a common iron sword is analyzed for its lack of special properties. As the duo watches the combatant launch a high-speed strike against the wall, explaining that breaking a blade this way requires more than just raw power, and Jin Seojun tracks the movement with a sharp, focused intensity, before he lunges forward to deliver a precise, lethal blow to the enemy, shattering the noble's sword into pieces with a single, calculated impact, and the noble falls, his weapon destroyed and his ego completely crushed, triggering the system's weak point detection quest with the first knot broken, while the viewers lose their minds over Jin Seojun's terrifying efficiency, though the mentor remains cautious, demanding more proof before calling it skill, and his student realizes something vital about the technique they just witnessed, finally confirming that Jin Seojun has cracked the hidden rules of the combat system. The chat is already popping off, but Jin Seojun ignores the noise, because a sudden intruder crashes the scene, demanding his immediate attention, though he remains unfazed, offering to show the guy exactly how it is done, focusing entirely on the breakable weak points he can now see, remembering the old masters who spoke of knots in their past lives, reflecting on his own high-level martial arts path that missed these subtle truths, until he locks onto the incoming fighter's intent, reading every muscle twitch, and sees right through the creator's design on that heavy shield, making everyone in the chat think he's given up by closing his eyes, right before he lunges forward to intercept the massive incoming polearm, creating a single, precise fracture across the center of the reinforced defense, following through with a strike that shatters the enemy's equipment like glass, leaving the intruder wide open as his guard falls away to nothing. While the audience watches the impossible play out in real time, because Jin Seojun did not just break the shield, he dismantled the entire stance, scattering the remnants of the gear into the air like falling debris, leaving every single viewer in the stream absolutely losing their minds, as they try to process how a simple sword shattered such heavy armor, and they start whispering about whether this guy is even human anymore. While the bewildered challenger demands to know how he pulled that move off, Jin Seojun barely reacts to the massive donation flooding the chat, while his opponent panics, frantically insisting that the entire match is scripted, and tries to call out his rival for what he thinks is a total bluff, as the stream chat devolves into pure chaos with accusations of a rigged broadcast, but Seo-jun just reminds him that he told everyone to bet big while they had the chance. Though he still feels like something is fundamentally off about the situation, noting the bizarre channel predictions where almost everyone expects him to fail, since only a tiny fraction of the audience actually believes he can find more than 4, yet he chuckles at the realization that the entire chat is moving in perfect unison, realizing the viewers are weirdly comforted by the idea that everyone will lose together. While the stream count spikes past 30,000 as he keeps the pacing effortless, and even his opponent begins to wonder if this guy was born to be a streamer, so Seo-jun tells him to calm down, signaling that he is done playing games for now before the frustrated challenger demands to know how he managed that insane build, prompting Seo-jun to brush off the intensity by claiming he is just an average guy, which leaves the challenger staring in absolute disbelief at the claim. As he calls out Seo-jun for being a complete fraud after pulling off moves like that, but Seo-jun simply drops the act, revealing his full name to the entire platform, and the sudden shift in his demeanor hits the screen with an almost physical weight, leaving every single viewer to wonder if they just witnessed a total character reset. A massive donation notification explodes on screen, signaling the chaos is only starting. While viewers frantically debate the details of what they just witnessed in the game, and the system interface struggles to keep up with the sheer volume of incoming data, so the moderator worries about a potential ban while Jin Seo-jun remains eerily unbothered, then another donation rolls in, this time poking fun at his suspicious height stats, but Jin Seo-jun coolly diffuses the tension, choosing to let the petty insult slide for now, which forces the moderator to back down despite his clear frustration with the situation, and the chat feed turns into a frenzy of questions about his insane sword technique. So Jin Seo-jun claps his hands, demanding everyone focus back on the actual gameplay, yet the moderator cannot stop himself from asking exactly how he pulled off those reflexes, to which Jin Seo-jun admits he is not even looking at the specific target indicators, claiming instead that he relies on pure intuition because he is just a genius, leaving his companion staring in disbelief as the reality of the claim sinks in, while the chat loses its mind over his arrogant yet strangely charming attitude, and the moderator physically wilts from the sheer audacity of the entire conversation, begging him for at least a shred of wisdom to explain his bizarre playstyle, so Jin Seo-jun reveals he approaches the game by thinking exactly like the developers, analyzing the core intent behind every single system mechanic to exploit it fully, showing a prime example of how he turned a basic defensive parry into an offense, and explaining that he prefers complex maneuvers over standard tools because they offer better results. Jin Seo-jun dismisses standard mobs as a waste of time, opting for fun over efficiency, because he decides the knot mechanic is only worth it for high-stakes boss encounters, ignoring the warnings that boss difficulty is already pushing the limits of their current gear, since he declares he's going straight for a ruler-tier opponent to test his theory, leaving his companions begging him to reconsider and choose a less suicidal farming target, only for him to ignore their pleas and set his sights on an alpaca, while challenging his party to bet on whether he can break a ruler's equipment. And the system immediately initializes a channel point prediction for his wildly dangerous new goal, so Jin Seo-jun grins at the stream, telling everyone to lock in their bets now before he launches himself into the fray to trigger the encounter with brutal force, stepping into the arena as the environment begins to shatter under the sudden pressure, where ruler Richard Neville emerges, swearing vengeance for his fallen kin with blood in his eyes, charging forward with a heavy blade that radiates the authority of the royalist faction, and the two clash instantly as Richard Neville swings his sword with lethal intent, but Jin Seo-jun weaves through the strike with effortless precision, sliding past the massive blade, causing Richard Neville to falter in confusion when he realizes his opponent is already gone, while onlookers watch in horror as Jin Seo-jun successfully tags him with a knot, leaving the spectators stunned that he managed to pull off such a feat so quickly, and Richard Neville reels back, wondering how the kid managed to close the gap so fast, while the party watches from the sidelines, struggling to keep track of the sheer speed. A warning flashes that Richard Neville's weapon might be immune to knotting, but Jin Seo-jun just smiles, ready to test that theory for himself, crackling energy surges across Richard Neville's armor as he prepares a desperate counter. Yet Jin Seo-jun remains unfazed, welcoming the challenge with a cold, focused gaze. Their blades collide in a blinding flash that forces the onlookers to shield their eyes. Metal screeches against metal, sparks flying as they trade blows in the heat of battle. Richard Neville roars that this repetitive strategy will not work on him twice, right before Jin Seo-jun drives his strike deep into the gap in the boss's defense, successfully landing another precision hit that bypasses the armor's legendary durability. The stream goes wild, realizing Jin Seo-jun has actually pulled it off again. Agility carries him across the arena as he dances through the chaotic aftermath of the clash. A system notification pops up showing his progress toward the elusive weakness detection skill. Markers tick upward rapidly as Jin Seo-jun lands strike after strike with surgical intent. Calm confidence radiates from him, watching Richard Neville struggle to regain his footing. Viewers in the chat cannot believe their eyes as the combo count hits the limit, Electricity arcs violently off Richard Neville's gear, signaling the total failure of his defenses, and finally the Count hits the max. Completing the quest requirements in real time, the long-awaited weakness detection skill unlocks, marking a massive power spike for the fighter. One final movement sees Jin Seo-jun preparing to deliver the closing blow, while he apologizes with a smirk, knowing Richard Neville's defeat is already sealed. Jin Seo-jun drops the mic on his duel with Richard Neville, then logs out of the capsule to catch his breath after the intense carry, where he finds a fan still hanging around, gushing over the performance. Despite the massive skill gap, Seo-jun remains humble while thanking the kid for the gear. But things get awkward when the fan tries to get a little too close for comfort, so he quickly pivots to find a bit of breathing room away from the fan, only to run into another familiar face who clearly took the day off to watch the stream, and the guy starts pestering him about why he is not heading out for his next appointment, making Seo-jun realize he totally spaced on his actual schedule. Meanwhile, the stream chat is absolute chaos, with fans spamming for him to appear, causing the moderator to scramble as he tries to keep the mob of hungry fans under control. But the chat is not having any of it and immediately shuts the mod down, leaving him no choice but to push through the noise and get the show on the road. So he finally gives the signal that the star is ready to make his appearance, and hypes up the audience to welcome the man of the hour, showing the digital crowd finally getting exactly what they were begging for. Seo-jun steps into the spotlight, instantly living up to the massive hype building in the chat, greeting his viewers with a smile that's probably going to break the internet, and officially introduces himself as the travel streamer everyone's been talking about, while the system fires up his next connection, ready to drop him into the unknown. Jin Seo-jun brushes off the compliments about his looks, but the chat is already roasting him with hilarious, petty insults, as he jokingly defends his recent weight gain to his audience, and the trolls mercilessly declare him a knockout for the wrong reasons, so he pivots the stream to announce he is stepping away for a bit, while he preps dinner to get a group meal ready for everyone, and a massive donation notification pops up to celebrate his return, though the fans' overly affectionate message leaves him visibly confused, especially when he tries to clarify the donor's gender mid-broadcast. And another huge donation rolls in just to keep the pressure on him, shifting the topic as viewers demand a demonstration of his special ability. So Seo-jun activates his signature skill to identify a target's weak point, detailing how the technique can systematically dismantle an opponent's gear, and he teases the audience with a smile before wrapping up the segment, moving straight into a lightning-fast Q&A session with the chat, where he keeps his answers short, claiming he just runs for workouts, and reveals his streaming career actually started thanks to a friend's recommendation, while the cooking continues in the background with the sound of sizzling meat, as Kim Tae-woo suddenly pops into the frame to claim credit for that advice, and the two friends settle in to eat while the chat loses its mind. Jin Seo-jun and Kim Tae-woo drop the bomb that they've been friends since high school. And the chat absolutely implodes, realizing Seo-jun has been living with his roommate all along, while a massive donation floods in just to roast Tae-woo for his secret double life, leaving the pair scrambling to figure out how the fans even connected the dots. But a huge donation forces Seo-jun to stop and address the chaos, as he desperately tries to pull the plug on the stream to salvage his reputation, before eventually deciding to lean into the madness with an embarrassing story, explaining how Tae-woo is normally chill but has some seriously questionable habits, like the time he tried to wash an expensive electronic capsule with plain soap, or that other incident where he actually tried to cool the device down with a fan, while the chat watches in horror at the absolute lack of common sense, and Seo-jun dramatically reenacts the struggle while Tae-woo tries to hide his face in shame, until the two devolve into a full-blown wrestling match right at the dinner table, finally settling down once the food is polished off and the stream winds down, so they take a moment to exchange genuine thanks for the successful collaboration, with Tae-woo admitting he gained a ton of insight from watching Seo-jun operate. Then the conversation shifts toward the future of creating content on YouTube, as Tae-woo offers to hook him up with a pro editor if he decides to start, clearly eager to help his friend navigate the platform with the right connections. And Seo-jun listens closely, considering whether to take him up on the offer. The cold snap of a soda can opening signals a moment of reflection, as Jin Seo-jun stands on the balcony to catch a much-needed breath, questioning if a full-time career on YouTube is really the path he wants to take. But back inside, the group continues to hash out the logistics of building a channel, insisting that the potential for massive growth is too good to ignore, and emphasizing how much a quality editor changes the game for creators, pointing out that the revenue streams are already looking surprisingly solid, though finding the right person to handle complex capsule game footage remains the real hurdle. So Seo-jun shifts the focus to Lee Soo-han, asking how he ended up managing the alpaca account, revealing that Soo-han started as a regular office worker before stumbling onto those streams, finding a channel that was brimming with potential but completely abandoned by its owner, which drove Soo-han to reach out and take control before anyone else could, tossing aside his old career just to bet everything on that small, unpolished streamer, because he saw the spark that no one else could quite grasp at the time, fully convinced that alpaca was destined to blow up into a massive success. And as the sun begins to set over the city, the weight of the decision settles in, leaving Seo-jun to weigh the necessity of an editor against his own original plans, while the trending page reminds him that the audience is hungry for more content. specifically the kind of high-level victory that captures everyone's attention at once, forcing him to reevaluate his goal of quitting the capsule game circuit for good, admitting that the streaming life ended up being far more engaging than he initially expected. Because he actually enjoys the social aspect of hanging out and laughing with his audience, finding the usual elitist chatter about respect and status from other players pretty pathetic. And yet he can't help but wonder if that isolation was just a mask for his own loneliness, gripping his drink as the realization hits that he might have been far more solitary than he admitted, staring out into the night while the quiet thoughts begin to take hold. Watching the falling petals drift by like memories of a world he left behind, realizing that dwelling on his past life is like staring at a home he can never reach again, a distant, unreachable place that lingers in the back of his mind, so he shakes it off, deciding it is time to stop overthinking and just clear his head, heading straight for the gym to burn off the restless energy, arriving at the training facility while the day is still bright. Stepping onto the mat where the familiar sounds of sparring fill the air, throwing himself into the fight to trade blows and leave the heavy thoughts behind, maintaining his focus as he slips and weaves through the opponent's rhythm, watching the gym regulars take notice of how he's channeling all that frustration into his movement, knowing full well that anyone sparring with him ends up walking away feeling the intensity, until he finally calls out to his instructor to break the pace. Wanting to know just how much longer he needs to grind on this treadmill, but the coach just tells him to keep going, reminding him he's only 2 weeks into the drill. Seo-jun tries to pull the pro gamer card, but the coach shuts him down instantly, reminding him that virtual skills do not translate to real-world physics, and Seo-jun knows he's going to be stuck on this treadmill forever if he does not change things up, so he starts whining for real combat training instead of just cardio. Finally wearing the coach down until they agree to a light sparring session, letting Seo-jun pick his own opponent while the gym regulars look on with skepticism, leaping onto the mat with way too much confidence for someone who usually just plays games, but his expression shifts the moment he locks eyes with the competition across the ring, scanning the room to see who actually stepped up to take his challenge, realizing the guy standing there is someone he's seen somewhere else before. Recognizing the face from those viral clips everyone in his circle keeps sharing, recalling how his buddies would not stop talking about that specific fighter's ridiculous technique, and even Hyeon could not help but get hooked on those same training videos, leaving Seo-jun genuinely surprised to see the legend in the flesh right in front of him, while the rest of the gym starts whispering about how a streamer managed to snag such a high-tier opponent. Wondering if this guy is actually going to be as good as the internet claims, because the reality of the situation is starting to sink in for Seo-jun, and he realizes he might have bitten off way more than he can chew, so the coach checks in to make sure he's actually ready to face a real fighter, before giving him a quick reality check that sparring is about learning, not just scoring a win. The coach keeps pushing for a real assessment of his technique, forcing Seo-jun to stop overthinking and just step up to the plate, secretly sizing up the opponent and deciding he's actually manageable since he's not exactly huge, getting a firm warning from the coach to keep his head in the game, while someone else in the gym chimes in to see if they can tag along, leaving the surrounding crowd completely baffled by the request to challenge that specific guy, because everyone else knows better than to pick a fight with a legend. So Seo-jun just bluntly asks if it's rude to spar without an introduction, earning a laugh from the coach who thinks that question is way out of line. But before things get awkward, the mysterious fighter walks right over to them, casually asking if Seo-jun wants to trade blows, and Seo-jun is immediately starstruck, recognizing Lee Soo-han right away, explaining that he caught Lee Soo-han's stream just yesterday, so the two of them head straight into the ring to get started. With Lee Soo-han already suited up in his sparring gear, while Seo-jun cracks a joke about being pretty good himself, though Lee Soo-han coolly retorts that he's still not on his level, leaving Seo-jun completely confused when Lee Soo-han asks who he even is, acting like he's never heard of the self-proclaimed god of games before, so Seo-jun is left fuming, wondering why he's being so disrespected by the legend. Determined to prove his worth, Seo-jun squares up to Lee Soo-han. But the professional fighter barely shifts his stance, promising to keep things gentle as he closes the distance. And before Seo-jun can even blink, a massive blow connects and sends him reeling, while the city skyline looms quietly over the aftermath of the lopsided spar. Back with Jin Ha-jun, who watches the feed while sipping a drink, noting how rough that exchange looked for his son, despite Ha-jun's assessment that the kid is just a regular civilian. Observing the brutal knockout on the screen, Ha-jun spots a flicker of raw talent in the boy's movement, shifting the conversation to how the streaming career is actually progressing, with Ha-jun questioning if Seo-jun's mother is still against the whole thing, though Seo-jun remains evasive about the actual state of his channel, while Ha-jun recalls Kim Tae-woo mentioning how impossible it is to even get one viewer. And Seo-jun starts getting defensive about his father digging into his personal business. Suddenly Ha-jun pivots to pitching an old-school title called Planet Craft, which leaves Seo-jun completely baffled by his father's out-of-touch suggestion, since Ha-jun persists in grilling him about his current follower count, pushing for a specific number that Seo-jun is clearly hesitant to admit, and when the kid finally lets the number slip, Ha-jun nearly chokes on his drink, leaving the father absolutely stunned by the sudden growth of the channel. 3,000 followers is just the beginning of the chaos, especially with random memes about his content flooding the internet, since the recent collaboration sent the community into a total frenzy, and now every single post Seo-jun makes is racking up massive engagement, proving that the audience has finally stopped hating on his sudden rise to fame, meaning everyone knows who he is now. Though checking his phone reveals the internet is already digging into his secrets, specifically a thread about some vague criteria for the dawn of the assassination squad, leaving the kid wondering how they even found that specific detail, while he cannot help but laugh at the absurdity of the accusations piling up. So he decides to just report the nonsense and move on with his day, figuring a clarification stream is the only way to set the record straight. Settling into his gaming pod to get the broadcast started, 3 days in and he's ready to see how many people actually show up. As the viewer counter kicks off with a steady climb, ticking upward past 1,500 in the blink of an eye, which hits like a shockwave for anyone watching the stats, because the viewers are losing their minds over a weak point that should have taken months to unlock, leaving the skeptics in the chat completely baffled by how fast he's breaking the game. And proving that Seo-jun is making the impossible look like a casual Tuesday. Seo-jun brushes off the accusations with a smirk, while his colleague stares in disbelief at the laptop screen, demanding an explanation for the chaos unfolding on the monitor, so Seo-jun just points to the video file queued up, forcing his partner to watch the footage of his latest exploit, which shows the exact moment he tears through the game's security, shredding the defensive knots like they were made of paper. Leaving the observers to watch in stunned silence as he dominates, because the sheer efficiency of his movement defies all established logic. And even with their internal checks, they find no evidence of a bug, leaving the expert to break down the sheer skill involved, explaining how Seo-jun mastered a route that usually takes months of grinding, defending his reputation against any accusations of cheating, while his colleague can only fan his excitement over the sheer genius on display. Though the technical details still leave them scrambling for answers, and Seo-jun just leans back, clearly enjoying the absolute confusion he caused, revealing the secret behind the curtain, the Shard of Order, which turns out to be a hidden Easter egg for their upcoming project, triggering a massive quest chain that ties everything together and dropping the teaser trailer right when the hype is at its absolute peak. Seo-jun realizes his carefully calculated promotional strategy was far too perfect, but then the entire plan hits a massive snag, as one single player manages to shatter his flawless projections, leaving him curled up in despair on the office sofa, while his team questions how long their previous work took to produce. So a desperate plan for a massive overtime push begins, aiming to compress a month of work into a single week. Despite the impossible pressure of tracking shards of order in that window, yet one team member insists with absolute terrifying confidence, swearing that success is 100% guaranteed, which only sends their exhausted lead into a deeper spiral of misery as he curses the streamer for ruining his professional life, eventually getting kicked out of the office in frustration, leaving the lead developer alone to face his computer screen, where he watches the gameplay footage in total disbelief, frantically tapping the keys to understand how it happened, searching for any sign of a glitch or hidden exploit, but he finally has to admit the footage is completely legitimate, watching the viewer count skyrocket to over 100,000 as he witnesses the player effortlessly dominating the high-level content. Jin Seo-jun clicks the recording and the gameplay footage starts, showing his character executing a flawless high-speed sword combo, while the search bar highlights his name in the viral analysis, leaving him to mutter a quiet, impressed assessment of his own work. As the developers watch the screen, completely captivated by the technique, one realized that his secret route had finally been exposed, and he barely notices the time, lost in the sheer satisfaction, stretching back in his chair while the adrenaline finally fades. Wondering if this is what it feels like to truly succeed, because seeing players embrace his design is exactly the goal, keeping a thoughtful, satisfied smile on his face, while Jin Ha-jun pulls up the live channel feed, hitting 1,700 followers in the blink of an eye as the stream status updates to announce he is finally live, greeting the massive incoming crowd with a casual wave, checking the chat flow that is already moving too fast. Ready to showcase the new assassin and mount gear, including a bizarre fish item that makes the viewers lose it, confirming that everyone is settled in and ready for the run, and Jin Ha-jun prepares to manage the chaos of his growing squad. The chat is already buzzing with theories about Jin Ha-jun's sudden rise, with users scrambling to offer their services as official moderators, even if some of his followers are a bit too eager for the role. So Jin Ha-jun lays down the ground rules for the stream right away, keeping things weird but strictly within his boundaries for the community, though the elephant in the room is still those suspicious knots on his gear, and Jin Ha-jun finally admits he could have been clearer about his methods, explaining that he simply identified weak points in the gear to cut them, which led some viewers to mistakenly report him for using a hack, prompting him to actually email the developers to clear his own name, sending the chat into absolute hysterics over the accidental self-report. And he can only laugh at the absurdity of the misunderstanding, moving past the drama to get the actual stream content started, finding a brand new mission notification waiting in his interface, sent directly from the development team to test his capabilities, requiring him to use magic point absorption on the Tower Master, which is going to be a massive test of his current skill set, making Jin Ha-jun weigh the difficulty against the rewards, because the payout for this first mission is honestly insane and he prepares to dive into the challenge headfirst. Doubts creep in as Jin Ha-jun questions the dev's true intent while the chat mocks his apparent naivety in real time, and the massive mage tower lights up with an ominous, sprawling aura, standing as the dark heart of a city ruled by magic, where hidden human experiments have been churning behind the scenes. But Jin Ha-jun cuts through the tension with a quick, decisive movement, sprinting past an NPC who is comically losing their mind in terror, unaware that the man they fear is actually the one he is hunting. And Jin Ha-jun finds the irony hilarious while keeping his mission focus, dismissing the safe routes in favor of keeping his stream unpredictable, tossing aside the standard approach that everyone expects him to take. Even if his audience thinks the Mage Tower is far too dangerous, so he strides confidently into the grand, imposing entrance, stepping past the threshold to see what the devs have waiting, scouting the vast, ornate interior for any immediate signs of resistance, noting the pair of guards walking ahead without a care in the world. Though he realizes there are fewer mages here than his chat predicted, observing the layout while mentally mapping his next aggressive strike. And the viewers go quiet, sensing that things are about to get chaotic, until a guard suddenly turns around to block his path with a warning. Jin Ha-jun figures a little intimidation is the perfect way to break the ice, but he does not wait for a response before cutting the guard down with a swift strike, and the soldier goes down instantly without even a chance to properly react, while Jin Ha-jun stands tall over the falling body, sensing that something is very wrong. Noticing the sudden strain on his own limbs as his feet refuse to obey, because a hidden magic circle has completely locked his body in place, leaving Jin Ha-jun trapped while a mocking voice echoes through the hall, as the real threat reveals himself, hands wreathed in chilling blue flames, and the mage unleashes a torrent of energy directly onto the immobilized intruder, trapping Jin Seo-jun under a relentless magical assault he can barely comprehend.